Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. Collin Wilson and I will be tackling college baseball for the next 2 months. We're going to be mixing in our thoughts on the futures market as well as giving out projections and plays for the weekend slates. Usually this episode is going to drop midweek, so a part of what we're going to be doing is reading the tea leaves as to who those starters are going to be on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what those odds are going to be, trying to give you ranges in which to play them. Speaking of futures, though, let's bring up one of the noticeable differences between college football and college baseball. Here's the top 5 in college baseball per division1baseball.com. You got Texas, Clemson, Oregon State, Florida State, Arkansas. But what's interesting is when you look at the futures market, number 1 Texas is 5th in the pecking order in terms of the market at 10-1. Number 2 Clemson is 7th at 15-1. Oregon State, number 3 in the entire country, they're 13th, going off at 30-1. Florida State, 9th at 25-1. And then finally it comes back with your Arkansas Razorbacks, Collin, second in the market in terms of their value to win the national championship at plus 550, edging up to being close to being a co-favorite. What's the simplest explanation for this differential between the rankings and the futures market?
You don't want to treat college baseball like it's a one-conference sport, and it is. I think that's the dirty little secret that's going on around here, is we like to pretend like UC Irvine can win the national title. They can't. Sometimes we like to pretend Oral Roberts can win the national title. They can't. Sometimes we like to pretend a Big 12 team can win the national title. When was the last team from the Big 12 that won? I believe it was Texas over 20 years ago. Guess what? They're not a Big 12 team anymore. So I think the dirty little secret in the futures market is that everybody knows that you're not looking for the UC Irvines of the world. You're looking for the dip in the SEC teams, which this is a very, very interesting week. We've got Tennessee falling off the map. We've got Arkansas's bullpen falling off the map. Have the odds shifted that much on them? No, not enough for me to tell anyone to go get the dip. But we definitely have other teams in that conference to talk about.
All right. Last week, we basically sang the praises of the SEC. It's well-deserved. You look up and down this conference, there's, 10 teams that could make noise, through the conference tournament into, regionals, super regionals, potentially make it to Omaha. So deservedly so. But when you look at the top 5, as I just mentioned, lo and behold, we have 3 non-SEC programs in the top 4 alone at the national rankings. So let's start with Oregon State. This is going to be an episode where we kick the tires on some of these teams outside of the Southeastern Conference. The Beavers are good everywhere, but not truly elite in any statistical category. Yes, they hit a lot of home runs, but outside of that, they're slugging, they're on base, everything else, they're just really good. They have been road warriors. They're up to 5th in road RPI. Arquette and Turley batting 2-3 in their lineup gives them plenty of pop, 28 home runs, 98 RBIs combined. But they're 2 starting pitchers at the top of their rotation, Kleinschmidt and Whitney. They won't remind you of Omaha legends like Paul Skeens or Dylan DeLucia. So the question here is, do the Beavers have it in them to not just be a cute West Coast story, but to be a real threat to win the national championship?
I say absolutely. Now, Oregon State, over where I've been writing this offseason, I had them pegged the very first bet of the year. Actually, I think it's the only bet I have in the app at 35-1. 25-1 is still out there. We'll talk about that later, potentially. But the reason why they're going to be battle tested and ready is, A, do they have the stat that everybody has to have? Home runs per 9. The answer is yes. They're 13th in the nation right now. They can absolutely swat. Their RPI, they're 5th in the nation in road RPI. And why is that important? Because the committee, when they make these regionals, they treat it a little bit like March Madness. The number 1 team in the West generally needs to be a team in the West, right? Or a 2 seed that's in the West should potentially be in the West Coast. They try to play a little geography with the super regional seeds, which means they always give a West Coast team a super regional a host seed. And that's where Oregon State is. They are completely in the driver's seat. They have faced the toughest schedule they possibly could as a D1 independent. Yes, a D1 independent, because they turned down a chance to go to the Mountain West. So they've done everything from a scheduling perspective. They have a huge series with Oregon this weekend. After that, it is smooth sailing, no conference championship weekend. And the committee is going to give them, at worst, the 8 super seed, but they're in the supers.
Florida State likely has 2 All-Americans, Alec Lodis at short, hitting .446, and then Jamie Arnold on the bump. Arnold has it all as a lefty. He's got plus stuff. He's got that low release point. I'll put you on the spot right here, Collin. Is he a better pro prospect than Hagen Smith was last year, in your opinion?
No. He does not have the extra pitch that Hagen has. He is very good, but he has more breakdowns. And I don't know if that's a mental thing that could be corrected once he gets up to the program. But Hagen Smith did not have many letdowns. He only had his letdown in the Super Regional. Other than that, Hagen Smith was solid the whole year. But Jamie Arnold has had games where he has fallen. Now, Florida State can pick him up. You can talk about strength of schedule being 63rd, maybe he's not facing the biggest bats. But Hagen Smith, every time he took the mound, faced the best offenses in the nation. And I can't say that about Jamie Arnold and the schedule that they have. So Florida State's definitely a player for the Super Regionals. As far as they go after that, I'm not sure they have it from a whole pitching staff perspective to get it done in winning Omaha.
All right, let's close this out in the ACC talking about Clemson. Not all that dissimilarly from Oregon State. The Tigers have been fantastic on the road, but they're not truly elite in any category other than their bullpen, headlined by Lucas Malstead. He's got that distinctive sidearm delivery, 1.11 ERA in 17 appearances this season. And Reed Garris has slid into that setup man role, but he is someone who still has high-end stopper ability. So if this pen remains special, is that enough for them to get to Omaha?
The pitching will work in Omaha, but can you survive your regionals and your super regionals? And I think the secret weapon that they have is their head coach, Eric Bakich. Now you say, why is he so important? When he took Michigan to the College World Series championship round against Vanderbilt, do you know what it means to take a team from the Big Ten, from a cold weather school, to the championship round against Vandy? Against who was that? Kumar Rocker back in the day? I mean, it was highly impressive what they did, and they did it because of their coach. And he has the experience. And last year, it was down to the wire before Clemson was finally knocked out. They are absolutely one of those teams that are in between supers and Omaha. And when you look at some of their advanced statistics, they have a top 10 RPI. They have number 3rd road RPI. I would be a little bit nervous about being 97th in homers per game because you don't know and where they're geographically located. Are you going to try to get in a bomb fest with Georgia? That could be tough. Clemson could draw a team that doesn't have pop and a lot of pitching. That would be the Mississippi States of the world. That would be, I think the Auburns of the world. Teams that, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State are the 2 SEC teams that are based on pitching and don't have pop. If Clemson draws those 2 teams, they're in good shape. They draw Georgia, could be a little bit of a different story.
All right, let's turn now to the weekend. I'm going to go through day by day, basically pull out some matchups, see what your opinion is. Some of this is instructional in just terms of people coming in casually for the first time betting on college baseball this season. It's eye-popping. Some of the numbers that you have to lay in terms of the quality starter at home. Also, the totals are, you get whiplash looking at this, going from the majors where 7.5, 8 to now all of a sudden you got lines that are set at, totals at 16 or 17. Let's start in the SEC. Mizzou traveling to Alabama. Tyler Fay on the bump for the Crimson Tide. He is projected, at least by your numbers, a minus 760 favorite. So let's get this out of the way here. With a number this big, is it a waste to bet it straight on the money line? Do you need to immediately jump to a run line, or do you tack it onto a parlay as a sweetener? And then the second part of this, Justin LeBron continues to play at an All-American level, surpassing any expectations of him coming out of high school by a wide margin. He was a freshman All-American last year at Alabama. Are you surprised at all that the Crimson Tide were able to retain him, and now he's at this level where it looks like just a full-out All-American?
I am not. I'll start with the second question, answer it first. I am not surprised they were able to retain him. I think the talent dating pool that he's looking for is much better in Tuscaloosa than it would be, say, in high A ball in Wilmington, North Carolina. Plus, he's probably making more money, which is really the ultimate decider. So I wasn't surprised they were able to keep him. I think the one comment I'll make is Mizzou is a free square. And I hate to say that for the Missouri grads that are listening, but Missouri Tigers are horrific at baseball. I don't know why they have a program. I know there's some clip about me saying that my own program should blow it up. But Missouri baseball, they should probably just kind of concede the rest of the year. Now that I say that, they'll come out and get a game against Alabama, but they have been very, very horrific from a pitching, from a hitting. They are not SEC level. I'm not sure what level they are. So when you ask a number like minus 762, you're probably going to see minus 400 to minus 600 in the market. What do you do with that? I like all those options you gave me, Calabrese. Often I do. Everybody loves in college football. Everybody loves a round robin. They love the G5 round robin. They love the Collin Stuckey round robin on Saturdays. They like the Collin round robin. We all like the round robins. That's exactly what whoever team is that's facing Missouri is. They're a part of your round robin. And if you want to go single game on your team covering the run line, take the Friday night ace. That's probably your best shot.
We talked a lot about Clemson already. Let's get into their matchup here against NC State. Clemson in the past month have held 7 opponents to 3 runs or less. Will that trend continue in Raleigh against a Wolfpack team that is very difficult to beat on their home diamond?
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. So Clemson is 5-1 in 2 ACC road series, and I think that's a big part of the handicap when I go look at 2 or 3 seeds that are going in regionals on the road, I want to see what you did on the road against your toughest competition. Right now, Clemson would track out pretty well in the resume. Now, NC State has yet to lose a series at home, but I think the more interesting factor here is the total. Friday night totals in NC State home games, last 3 have been a total of 12, 14, and 24 runs. A lot of runs are going on in NC State games in the opener. That could be wanting to save the pen till Saturday, Sunday. That could be that their starter is not getting it done. I am going to be specifically looking for an over in this Clemson NC State game on Thursday night. I know I projected at 12.4.
Oklahoma, Georgia, basically based on your projections, a coin flip, 14 in terms of the total. I know that Georgia has been banged up, but the Doors just held them to 10 runs across 3 games in a series sweep. It's so much for our Georgia picks. Georgia Tech and Georgia in the futures market, both those teams get swept last week. How concerned should Wes Johnson be about the return of Zaborowski to stabilize this lineup? Or do you think there is an opportunity to buy low on the Bulldogs?
I think he should be concerned if Zaborowski was not coming back. Now, all indications were he was game time decision. It's a foot, ankle / injury. Everything I've read on the, on the Twitters, he could have played. He didn't play. So if he comes back from the injury and he's fine, he still has his power, everything is great. But when you lose your leading player and punching in RBIs, I think he's at 55 on the year, then you have to start swapping spots in the lineup. And sometimes teams and players, I don't care if you're playing for the Mets or the Yankees or you're playing beer league softball. If you have been assigned the 9th hole the entire year, you're comfortable in that hole. You know your role. But an injury happens and you get flipped up to the 2 or the 1 spot. I mean, it's a completely different mental chamber. So I think that's what's going on with Georgia with the loss of one of the biggest sticks in the lineup. I think the adjustment hit them a little bit hard. It's definitely a monitoring situation. It's not a buy situation until I see more stability.
You mentioned the Big 12 hasn't produced a national champion in about 2 decades. They're still playing baseball in that conference. We got BYU, Arizona State. It's been boom or bust for Arizona State's Ben Jacobs this season. Their lefty ace has either been locked in or he's been all over the zone. He has 3 double-digit strikeout performances, and then he has outings like he did against Kansas where he issued 7 walks. Is there any interest in fading him in a spot just from the price? He may go off at minus 320, minus 330. Can BYU get it done if he struggles to find the zone?
BYU can hit, and that's good. Now, the question is whether Ben Jacobs can locate. And also, we don't have the database we have in MLB umpires, but man, I'd love to have some NCAA umpires to figure out which ones like overs and unders. If Ben Jacobs is locating, then it's going to be a problem. But BYU can absolutely hit, and it is a spot that I will be looking at for a run line on the underdog. I project this Arizona State minus 320. A total of about 15.3. And on Thursday night, hey, there's like 4 great games. I'll be betting on all 4 of them.
Before we get into the Friday slate, let's talk about the national game of the week. A&M at Texas, the Lone Star Showdown. Jim Schlossnagle coaching against his old team after leading the Aggies to the College World Series final, a runner-up season for them. And A&M is, at least at this point in the season, I think there's parallels between them and what the Florida Gators did last year. They both started either 1 or 2 in the preseason poll, dropped out of the rankings altogether. Florida got hot late, made it to Omaha. A&M all of a sudden, just in the past month, they beat Tennessee in a series on the road in Knoxville. They did the same to Arkansas in Fayetteville. So is this an opportunity to buy an A&M team that's hot? Clearly they need this against the number 1 team in the country.
Well, for all of you that have read my written work, I want to say thank you, because raise your hand if you have a 50 to 1 in your back pocket on Texas A&M. So it was a nice dip at 1-9. Then they woke up on Saturday against Tennessee and took the series, and now they're for real again. And we mentioned it on last week's first BBOC podcast on college baseball for the season. Now that Jay Laviolette has everybody healthy around him in that lineup, absolutely raking. We're talking Jack Caggs type raking stuff. It's just that he doesn't pitch. So A&M is bringing it in every single area right now. If you can go on the road and take a series from Tennessee, and then you can go on the road and take a series from Arkansas, you can win the national title. So this is a monster series this weekend. And there may be some things in the Texas numbers I don't really like, but we'll talk about that later.
I mentioned A&M Texas as the headliner, but this is a really deep weekend in terms of marquee matchups. So let's look at LSU and Tennessee. A common thread in the SEC, the big dogs, they're all nails at home, and LSU is 25-2 at Alex Box this season. But this should be a coin flip with Doyle and Anderson on the bump going off against each other. Who do you like in that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I project this pretty much a coin flip. I've got Kate Anderson at minus 120 at home, and Alex Box, I've got this at about 15.2 runs. The question is, I mean, that is not an easy place to play. Outside of Duty Noble and Baumwalker and Fayetteville, there just aren't a lot of places like Alex Box. So we'll see how Liam Doyle translates that. We'll see if he can get his team. He was stable for them. The losses have come on other people's time. We'll see. To me, on Friday, this is the pitching matchup that gets the main TV. Liam Doyle and Kate Anderson, because both of these teams can win the national title led by these two pitchers. And we talked about Liam Doyle at length last week, that he can lead Tennessee to a national title, but the rest of the staff has to pick it up for Tennessee here. So huge series. I suspect LSU will be short favorites. That's exactly where I project it. I'll be probably looking at weather and wind, and I expect a lot of runs in this series.
I had some notes down for Oregon State, but we're going to save that for later in the episode when we talk futures, because I think you're interested still in the Beavers at 25-1, possibly 30-1 out there in the market. So let's turn to Saturday, and I'll just let you cook on Arkansas and Gage Wood.
Yeah, I love Gage. Listen, I love my team. I'm sorry. I'm glad we have editors, because every time Arkansas baseball gets mentioned, the closer we get to Omaha, the more crazy I get and everybody knows who's a Razorback fan. Listen, Gage Wood is back for the Razorbacks. It was a starting pitching rotation that we were going to have early in the season. Got hurt. We had to turn former closer Gabe Gackle into a starter. Just this past weekend, Gage Wood is back. And Gabe Gackle returned to his closing role and threw like 5 innings on the second game of the series against Texas A&M. So what does this mean? Teams are now having to deal with Gage Wood starting and Gabe Gackle as the relief, sort of a two-headed monster that you're always going to get on the second game of the Razorbacks. So I have adjusted my numbers this week where I am now taking closers into consideration. So it's not just team ERA, FIP, and XFIP. It's not just your starting pitchers. Now I'm integrating closers. And closers that go 5 innings, closers that go 1 inning, closers that go 1 out. I know exactly how long they go, and I integrate that into the numbers. Now, when we look at this series, specifically Arkansas going to Florida, I got Gage Wood minus 126 on the road against Aiden King in the second game of that series. I have a total somewhere around 15. I think it's important to see how Gabe Gackle is used, because knowing Dave Van Horn and what he did with Kevin Kopps a couple years ago, he can start and go 7 innings. He can come in the second and finish the game. I think Gabe Gackle is that role. So that's the biggest name you're going to want to watch. Not so much that Gage Wood is starting again for the Razorbacks.
Kentucky riding high, flying high, whichever expression you prefer, coming off that win against Tennessee. That's one that can really change the overall ceiling, or at least the expectations for a program that made a deep run last year. They're hosting South Carolina here. If there was anything on the board that I was interested in playing under, you have 2 lineups that are not exactly fearsome by SEC standards. They rise and fall with their pitching staffs. Are you targeting some unders, whether it's on Saturday or earlier in the series?
Who doesn't love dink and dunk offenses in college baseball, right? I think, the Wildcats are off a series win at Tennessee. They won the Saturday, Sunday games. A little bit surprising. Another ripple against Tennessee here and what's going on in play. Pitching leads this team. They're much better numbers from the staff than South Carolina is. So I am leaning to Kentucky in every game. I make Nick McKay minus 261 against Jake McCoy on that Saturday game specifically. On the Friday night game, I've got Nate Harris minus 222 against Brandon Stone. So overall, I've got about a minus 220 to a minus 260 range for each individual game for Kentucky. I like them better overall with the numbers, and I'm going to look to play on the Wildcats this weekend if they are short of that minus 220 number.
Now, your projections go all the way through Sunday. What's the best way for people to follow you? Is it written articles on Action Network, on your Twitter page, to be able to see what your takes are as these series progress through the weekend? Obviously, that'll have a big impact on your projections, totals, and sides.
Yeah, my projections come out midweek every week on 3 Straight, and I like to tweet about them and talk about them, and I make my picks there on the site, and you can go and see what I'm leaning on. Well before numbers are out, I will show what I'm leaning on, what I want to take, and I will show what I've fired on, and of course, always tracking, keeping consistency. So, check it out there, because I think if everybody wants to know what my process is for betting, I set these numbers midweek. I pay attention to rotations, and then I follow Project 3 Straight, which announces the starting pitchers. It's a Twitter account that I created to relay starting pitcher information once it comes in So I think it's like one of a kind. It's nothing else like they're out there. But whenever pitching information comes in, I'll verify that my pitchers were right for the rotations. And if they are, and it's a number that I like, generally I'm going to fire. I'll look at wind. I'll look at recent pitching performance. I do a little bit of lefty righty split, a little bit of Sierra work, but generally I know which way I'm going to go on a number because, we calculate. That's why we calculate them pre-hand and try to guess the rotations pre-hand, because this is not MLB, right? There isn't 5 set guys and maybe the Dodgers have a 6th in the rotation, but this changes all the time. And I think last weekend was pretty frustrating because a lot of series started on Thursday because it was Easter weekend. Well, a lot of managers don't want to throw their game 1 starter from Fridays on Thursday. They want to keep him fresh for Friday and keep their Saturday guy on Saturday. So you saw a lot of weird names in game 1 of series last week. So that's where it becomes tough predicting rotations because your series may start on Thursday and you may not use your Friday guy. So I'll do my best to keep up with it. And, the projections will be live and everybody can check them out.
I mentioned earlier that there's a differential between college football, college basketball. I can speak to this having played the futures market and the game for the past 9 months for football and basketball. You're not getting the number 1 team in the country midway through the season at double digits. You're just not. Duke basketball was going off at 3-1 by the time January rolled around. They were there with Auburn as a co-favorite in college basketball. College football, at the point where Oregon was starting to separate a little bit, they get that win over Ohio State. The best you were going to get was 5-1, 6-1 on the Ducks. Meanwhile, the number 1 team in the country is sitting there at 10-1, 11-1. Are you biting on the Texas Longhorns at this point before their series with the Aggies?
Did a little bit of a deep dive, recording this on Tuesday, did a little bit of a deep dive on Monday about Texas, our number 1 team in the nation that is looking fantastic. More importantly, I want to know about this ERA whip that are second in the nation. Is this pitching staff that good? Well, Friday night starter Jared Spencer could get some regression in his number. His XFIP is a full 1.5 higher than what his actual ERA is. And what that means is his ERA is a little bit fake, and it may have some movement. Luke Harrison, Ruger Riojas, also their 2 pitchers for Saturday and Sunday, they have the same issues with their numbers where their XFIP is higher, more than a run higher than their ERA. That tells me that's going to come back. Now, Dylan Valantis is their closer. He's going to get a ton of punch outs. His numbers are for real. I don't really look at XFIP for closers. It's a different situation. This Texas A&M series is huge. It's hard to ignore Texas because they're top 35 in fielding percentage. They're top 35 in homers per 9. Those are 2 things that we look for. But at the same time, even being 17-4 in quad 1 and quad 2 games, they deserve the number 1 ranking in the country. XFIP tells me this team may have a little bit of fraud to it, so I'm not firing quite yet.
Speaking of teams that potentially have a little bit of fraud to them, Vandy just put the clamps on the Georgia lineup, and no one's really done that across an entire series this entire season. I understand that there were some players out of the Bulldogs lineup, but still impressive to hold Georgia to just 10 runs in 3 games. 22-1 to win the national championship. Has that piqued your interest, or do you think it's time to wait and see? Because when you look at Vandy's schedule coming up, it is brutal. So there's an opportunity for them, that number to inflate, or potentially for them to solidify themselves as a real contender.
Yeah. Vanderbilt has the 2nd toughest remaining schedule in the nation. Arkansas has the toughest. But really every SEC team, except for Mississippi State, has the toughest strength of schedule in the nation. Now, Vanderbilt I love. I can't get over the fact that Arkansas went there and swept them. And the reason why they swept them is because of the sticks. And that shows out in the numbers. Vanderbilt's 168th in home runs per 9. That to me does not scream as a team that can survive regionals and super regionals. You're going to have to stick against some of these teams that are going to come in, not even counting for the teams that just magically get hot and to go on a run like Oral Roberts, right? So 18-10, that's a great number in quad 1, quad 2 games, but this is a pitch heavy team that is on the outside of the super regional seed right now. I'm going to hold on the 22-1. But Vanderbilt's on my radar. I've got to see an increase in offensive production.
I promise to hold off from the West Coast matchup, but I got to get into it. Before we even talk about any future implications, let's just talk about the top 15 matchup on the West Coast between Oregon and Oregon State. It's probably going to come down to the matchup on Friday between the lefties Keljo and Grinsell. Keljo got banged around by Cal State Northridge in his last outing, while Grinsell for the Ducks has been on an absolute tear, coming off a complete game, 7K, 1 earned run performance against UCLA. Are you on the home team here? And even if this matchup ends up shaking the way of the Ducks and not the Beavers, are you still a believer in Oregon State's ceiling long-term?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with this Oregon series. This is a big one. And I do project Grayson Grinsell to be minus 140 on the opening night, Friday night, against Oregon State, against Nelson Keljo. I think that's the only chance that Oregon has to win a game in this series. I make this overall series price, if you can find them out there at various books, I make it minus 110. So if you see any shade towards the Oregon way over minus 110, then I think there's value on Oregon State. I don't think that's the best bet, though. I think the best bet is a future on Oregon State. There are still plenty of books out there nationwide that have 25-1 on a team. That is, and let me give you the resume here because this is important. They're third in the D1 baseball poll. They are 11th in RPI. That leaves an extremely high probability they're going to be granted a super regional seed at Goss Stadium. They're going to host regionals. They're going to host super regionals. Their path to Omaha goes through Corvallis, through their backyard, and that is a huge advantage. Take into consideration Oregon State has the 63rd rank and strength of schedule remaining. They don't have a conference championship tournament. This is a must buy. If you don't have Oregon State money, this is a team that should be in Omaha, and they are still listed out there at 25-1. And if you go past that, they're one of the best, 13th in homers per 9 this year. I don't think there's any other. I mean, futures right now, Calabrese, they're more about what's your path, what's your story to get there. And right now, Oregon State, everything in the numbers from RPI and the D1 poll, they're absolutely super regional team. They're going to draw somebody to come up there. It could be rainy and nasty, and the Beavers are going to love it. So sign me up. I've already got Oregon State. The very first future I put in, it was 35-1. There are 25-1s out there. Grab.
Do you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was another way to get into the game? Well, with Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. The game is in your hands. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, like touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored, and more. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all baseball picks or mix and match with other sports. You can play for as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So you could turn $1 into $1,000 just with your sports knowledge. I've been playing Underdog to spice up afternoon in the bigs. Special thanks to Pete Alonso for helping my bankroll. And that's the beauty of Underdog. You can ride the hot hand in any sport. From the NBA and NHL playoffs to Major League Baseball every day of the week, Underdog has you covered. Download the Underdog app and sign up using promo code BBOC to unlock a special offer for up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code BBOC. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon your first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or next step to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right, Collin, I'll get you out on this one. It's one of the best weekends of the regular season in college baseball. What's on the main screen for you, and what are on the two secondary screens that you have in your little bat cave watching all this baseball action?
Well, Arkansas, Florida always gets the main screen, gets the audio. I'm in the pool listening, bitching, cussing. Every Arkansas game is like that. Unless I'm actually down in Baum Walker, then I'm doing a lot more drinking. Tennessee LSU is going to get all the audio when I'm not watching the Razorbacks. Oregon State is going to have a large place on my TV. Thankfully, I think the times are going to work out where I can get that on its own. I think if you're also on watch this weekend, you're going to want to watch Mississippi State and Auburn. A crucial series for two teams that want to be included in regionals. They want to be 2 and 3 seeds. They've got work to do. And so this is a series that I project mostly about minus 115 either way in every game. Crucial series happening on down in Auburn. And once you get outside of that, let's go look at, Jamie Arnold on the road against Louisville. Louisville has been very surprising this year. I do project Jamie Arnold minus 150 in his matchup for Florida State. We'll see what they can do on the road. I continue to look for signs of life from the ACC that one of their teams can actually win the national title. And we'll see what happens with Clemson this weekend. Because right now, that would be the team that you would look at. But I'm not so sure because Virginia, UNC's on the rise, but I don't think you can get it done. There's just not a lot of consistency going on in the ACC.
That'll do it for today's episode. Thanks again for joining us. Special thanks to my co-host Collin Wilson and our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I'm Mike Calabrese. Next week, we will return for more college baseball coverage on the Diamond. Good luck with all your bets, and we'll see you next time at Big Bets on Campus.